John Watson. John Watson was the sidekick to the famous fictional super sleuth Sherlock Holmes, who originated in... let's try again. John Watson, the behaviorist. Here we go. John Watson was born in South Carolina to a very religiously conservative Christian family. His father abandoned them at a young age, which was attributed to his alcoholism. His mother was then a very staunch prohibitionist and held very strongly to her religious beliefs. Because of his strict religious upbringing, this led John to reject his mother's plans for his life and future, to develop a negative view towards any form of religion, and in himself becoming a proclaimed atheist. John Watson was not a high-achieving student in school. In fact, in high school, he was arrested by the police twice, once for fighting and once for firing a firearm within city limits. He eventually earned his PhD in 1903 from the University of Chicago. His dissertation was Animal Education, an experimental study of the physical development of white rats. It is noteworthy that his early experiments were in animal behavior. Watson was indeed influenced by Pavlov's experiments on conditioning. In 1913, Watson published a paper called Psychology as the Behaviorist Views It. This article would really launch his career and set his destiny. In fact, it has been dubbed the Behaviorist Manifesto. The views presented in John Watson's work really set him apart from the psychologists of the day. First of all, he really put an emphasis on external behavior and rejected the study of consciousness. This, of course, at his time flew in the face of the most popular theories of the day.
Tell me about your dreams.
Tell me about your mother.
Watson held that it was greater for psychologists to study behavior than it was to study the mind. He believed that modern attempts to study consciousness were holding back advancements in psychology. He thought that dreams and consciousness could not be studied because they could not be seen. So instead, he placed an emphasis on external behaviors and reactions rather than internal mental states. Probably his most popular theories had to do with emotions. He held that emotions were only physical responses to any given circumstance. He held that emotions were not some sort of unexplained, deep, unconscious reactions. Instead, they were learned. They were not instinctive at all. To help prove his theories, Watson conducted experiments. Only he didn't experiment on animals. He experimented on babies. One experiment in particular is known as the Little Albert experiment, and it may very well be one of the most controversial experiments in the history of psychology. What makes it all the more interesting is that there is video of the experiment. Watson showed a baby animals, monkeys, dogs, rats, rabbits, and the baby had no fear. He showed interest and he showed curiosity. But then he began showing him a rat, and every time the rat was in the baby's presence, he would bang a hammer onto a piece of steel, scaring the baby to death, over and over and over again. Eventually, he showed him the rat, and the baby was scared of the rat without the sound. He was also scared of bunnies and dogs dangled on leashes. The baby was also scared of anything furry, like a fur coat. And surprisingly enough, if you can believe it, he was scared of Watson himself when he put on a creepy-looking rabbit mask and crawled towards him. But this proved Watson's case. Fear must be learned. Watson expanded on these theories by saying that there were at least 3 emotions that were present at birth: fear, rage, and love. The fear that he's talking about was not necessarily the fear of a fluffy white rat or a cute cuddly bunny. Those are learned fears. But a baby will obviously be scared and jump when you bang a hammer on a piece of steel by his ear. Also, infants tend to show rage in certain situations if they are physically uncomfortable. Hunger, pain, wet diapers, etc. The third emotion that is innate is love, but love is simply a reaction to a mother cooing with the baby, cuddling or tickling his feet. It's nothing in the conscious or subconscious at all. It is simply a reaction to certain stimuli. To say that John Watson's theories and experiments were controversial would be an understatement. They were highly controversial, both at the time they were conducted and even today. But as much as they were rejected, they were also accepted. In fact, he is the father of the behaviorist movement. He wrote the Behaviorist Manifesto. John Watson got this whole ball rolling. And I can't help but come back to John Watson's origin story. It's true for anybody. Our past affects who we are in the present and who we will be in the future. However, is it easier to develop theories that help explain away the absence of love or the rage of a teenage fistfight when it's related to behaviors and reactions instead of something deeper and more profound? I don't know. What I do know is that John Watson's theories of behaviorism have echoed throughout the decades. They affected society in general. They affected the way people raise their children then and today, and have profoundly affected our views on public education.